At 3:00 a.m. I woke to the faint hum of the heater and the quiet rhythm of rain against my window. What I didn't hear, what I couldn't have known, was the sound of my younger sister, Madison, slipping into my room. While I slept, she pulled my wallet from the nightstand, slid my business credit card out, and walked away like it was hers. By morning, 19:00 was gone. First-class tickets to Italy, a suite in Florence, jewelry from Milan, designer handbags, champagne, the kind of excess she'd always dreamed about but never earned. A week later, she breezed back through my door, her skin bronzed from the Tuscan sun, draped in Gucci, smiling like she'd just come home from a spa weekend. Dad glanced at me and said, "Stop pretending she would never touch your money." I simply smiled because the card she used wasn't an ordinary card. I woke to the pale glow of my phone lighting up the nightstand. At first, I thought it was just another spam notification, but the buzzing wouldn't stop. Still half asleep, I reached for it, my fingers clumsy and cold. The screen was a wall of alerts from my bank app. One after another, each push notification felt like a jab to the ribs. 200, Alitalia Airlines, Rome. 800, Hotel Lungarno, Florence. 900, Bucasalati Jewelry, Milan. 100, Osteria Franciscana, Modena. And on it went over a dozen charges, all between 3:07 and 3:45 a.m. At first, my brain refused to process it. My account wasn't hacked. My card had been in my wallet, or so I thought. I threw off the covers, padded over to my desk, and yanked the drawer open. My wallet lay there, unzipped. The slot where my business credit card should have been was empty. A sour taste filled my mouth. I didn't live with strangers. I lived with family. Madison had been crashing at my apartment for the past 2 months. Officially, it was just until she figured things out after a rough patch with her roommate. In reality, she'd made herself comfortable sleeping in late, leaving takeout boxes on the counter, scrolling Instagram on the couch while I paid for groceries, utilities, even her rideshare trips because public transport gave her anxiety. I tried her bedroom door first. It was wide open. The bed was neatly made, like she hadn't been in it at all. No, Madison. The bathroom was empty. The kitchen was dark. Then I saw the front door. It wasn't closed all the way, just enough for a thin strip of hallway light to bleed through. My stomach tightened. By the time the sun came up, I had my answer. Madison's Instagram story was a parade of betrayal. Her, in oversized sunglasses at JFK's first-class lounge. Her, clinking champagne glasses with Brittany, our cousin, and her partner in every bad decision she'd ever made. Her, holding boarding passes to Rome, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. The caption? "Italy, baby. Life's too short, make it luxurious." $19,000 in unauthorized charges, all on a business account tied to the consulting company I'd been quietly building for the past 3 years. I froze the card immediately, filed a fraud report with the bank, and sat at my kitchen table staring at the muted hum of the refrigerator. The rage was there, yes, but beneath it was something sharper. Certainty. I already knew exactly how this would go when she returned. Madison would deny everything. Dad would defend her, and they'd both look at me like I was the unreasonable one. But this time, I wasn't going to argue. This time I was going to prove it. To really understand why my sister swiping my credit card at 3 in the morning wasn't just some impulsive mistake, you need to know the history. Because in my family, Madison has never been just my younger sister. She has been the untouchable princess since the day she was born. I'm not exaggerating. If she wanted something, she got it, no matter how reckless, expensive, or selfish. And if anyone dared to call her out, she would suddenly become the fragile soul who couldn't handle negativity. That's when Dad would swoop in, arms folded, and give you the look that meant drop it, or you're the villain now. Meanwhile, I was the reliable one, the one who made straight A's without being asked, the one who got a part-time job at 16 to pay for my own phone bill, the one who stayed out of trouble because I knew trouble would always land harder on me. Dad liked to call me steady, which sounds like a compliment until you realize it was just code for we can lean on you forever, because you won't complain. By 24, I had my own apartment, a decent job in corporate IT, and a side consulting business I was proud of. Madison was 22 and already on her fourth career pivot. She'd tried a semester of community college before deciding school wasn't for her. Then it was cosmetology school too shallow. Then a short-lived barista job management didn't vibe with her. After that, she floated from temp gig to temp gig, never staying more than a couple of months. Guess who covered her rent when she was between jobs? Guess who stocked her fridge when she forgot to budget for groceries? Guess who co-signed for her last credit card because the bank was being unfair about her spending history? Yeah, me. And here's the kicker. In Madison's mind, none of that counted as generosity. It was simply what family does. Funny how that rule only applied when she needed something. 2 months before the Italy stunt, she called me crying at midnight. She'd fought with her roommate something about boundaries and space and needed a place to crash just for a few nights. Against my better judgment, I said fine. I had a spare room after all. Night 3 turned into night 10, then 2 weeks. Then she started calling my apartment our place. The first time I saw her finish the last of my oat milk without asking, I knew I'd made a mistake. The packages were the real warning sign. High-end makeup brands, designer sneakers, luxury candles, stuff I knew she couldn't afford. When I asked how she was paying for it, she laughed and said, "Don't worry, I've got it handled." Which, in Madison speak, meant she was running up debt. She fully expected someone else, probably me, to fix later. And then came Brittany. If Madison is a hurricane, Brittany is the storm surge that makes everything worse. She's our cousin, but she's more like Madison's partner in crime. Both were raised on comfort. Both had a knack for skating past consequences. And together, they were chaos in designer sunglasses. The night before the theft, I overheard them on FaceTime, giggling about getting away and living it up. I rolled my eyes and went to bed, thinking it was just their usual fantasy talk. Madison had maybe $100 to her name. How far could she possibly get? I should have known better, because in our family, reality has never been a barrier for Madison. Someone else always foots the bill. And this time, that someone was me. I'm not the type to throw accusations without proof, especially when I know exactly how the family will react. In our world, Madison doesn't commit crimes. Madison makes mistakes. And mistakes, according to Dad, are supposed to be forgiven before they're even acknowledged. So I started gathering evidence. First, the building's security footage. I know the superintendent, and I've fixed his Wi-Fi more than once, so when I asked to review the hallway camera from last night, he didn't ask questions. The timestamp was burned into my brain. 3:12 a.m. Madison creeping down the hallway, my leather wallet clutched under her arm, suitcase wheels whispering against the carpet. 30 seconds later, Brittany appears, phone in hand, grinning like they're headed to a slumber party. They push through the lobby doors, disappear into the back seat of a rideshare, and the car pulls away. Next was Instagram. Brittany's story was gone by morning. She's always quick to delete, but Madison isn't as careful. At 4:07 a.m., she posted a boomerang of herself clinking champagne glasses in JFK's Alitalia lounge. The caption read, "Italy, baby. Manifesting the luxury life we deserve." And then there was my ace. The card itself. Madison didn't know this wasn't just any credit card, it was my business account card, linked to the consulting company I'd built quietly over 3 years. That card was tied to my custom tracking system, something I'd coded myself. Every single charge was logged, geotagged, and backed up with merchant data. I could see exactly where she was, what she bought, and at what time. By the end of the day, I had a tidy little package. Over a dozen transactions totaling 19 CCTV footage from my building, still images from boutique security in Milan, Madison at the counter swiping my card, a photo of her boarding pass in the lounge, name visible, Instagram posts and timestamps. It would have been enough to convince anyone except my father, because I've been here before. When Madison totaled Dad's car at 19 while texting and driving, he bought her a newer one because the old one had bad memories. When she spent her 5-0 savings on a spiritual retreat in Bali, he said, "You can't put a price on life experiences." When she got fired for skipping shifts, he took her out to lunch to cheer her up. But when I once overdrew my account by $40 in college because my paycheck was late, I got a 20-minute lecture on financial discipline, so no. Waving this evidence in Dad's face right now wouldn't work. I needed the right moment, the right setting, where Madison couldn't wriggle out and Dad couldn't pretend he didn't see. I decided I'd set the trap myself. Dinner. My place. Madison, Dad, and the truth all at the same table. And this time, I wouldn't be the one on trial. I knew I couldn't just walk into Dad's house, waving a stack of evidence. That's not how it works with Madison. If you challenge her on her turf, she'll laugh it off, twist the story, and by the end of the night you'll be apologizing for misunderstanding her. And if Dad's there? Forget it. He'll back her no matter how airtight the proof is. So I needed neutral ground, better yet, my ground. Somewhere I could control the pace, the tone, and the narrative. That's when the idea hit me. Dinner. Not an interrogation. Not a fight. Just a nice, calm dinner. Madison's favorite sushi. The kind she brags about on Instagram. I'd make it sound like an olive branch, like I was finally ready to let things go. She'd come because she'd think she'd won. Dad would come because he'd see a chance to gloat over my change of heart. And neither of them would see it coming. In the days leading up to it, I rehearsed what I'd say not word for word, but the structure. Start casual, keep them comfortable, let them feel in control, and then flip it. The evidence wasn't just sitting in my email. I compiled it into a slide deck like I was presenting to a client. Each photo, each receipt, each timestamp lined up perfectly with the next. By the time you reached the last slide, there was no way to spin the story. I even called 2 of the vendors Madison had hit in Italy. Explained I was investigating unauthorized purchases and asked politely if they'd share their security stills. Both complied within hours. The boutique's camera caught her mid-swipe at the register, that smug half-smile on her face. The jewelry store's footage showed her leaning over the glass counter, trying on bracelets. Every detail was a nail in the coffin. And yet, I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. Because I knew the hardest part wasn't proving she did it, it was forcing Dad to look at the truth and stay there long enough for it to sink in. So I fine-tuned my plan. Madison would sit at my left, Dad at my right, laptop angled just enough for both to see. Food in the middle to keep their hands busy. No interruptions, no escape. The night before the dinner, I barely slept. I kept replaying every scenario in my head, Madison storming out, Dad yelling, maybe even both walking away before I could show everything. But I reminded myself, this wasn't about their reactions. It was about me finally taking control of the narrative. When I texted Madison the invite, she replied in seconds, "Free sushi? I'm in." Dad's reply came a few hours later. "Glad you're finally being reasonable. We'll be there at 7. I closed my phone, took a deep breath, and looked over the slide deck one last time. They had no idea that by the end of dinner, the family dynamic we'd been living with for years would be gone, burned down to the foundation. And I was more than ready to light the match. I ordered the sushi. Madison loved the kind so overpriced you start wondering if they charge extra for the air around it. I told her Dad should come too, since we all need to clear the air. They arrived together, right on time. Madison sauntered in wearing a cream silk blouse and a Gucci belt I hadn't seen before, probably fresh from her Italian shopping spree. Dad followed, his expression already loaded with suspicion, but not toward her. We sat at my dining table, the food steaming in the middle. I let them eat for a few minutes, made small talk about nothing. Madison was relaxed, picking at toro sashimi like she didn't have a care in the world. Finally, I leaned back and said, "So, about the 19-0 you spent on my business card." Her eyes rolled so hard I thought they might disappear into her skull. "Oh my God, Charlotte, you're still on that? I told you, I didn't touch your money. You're making up stories again." Dad jumped in before I could respond. "Enough. We're not entertaining this nonsense. You've been paranoid about your sister for years." I smiled. "Good. We're not going to entertain it, we're going to prove it." From under the table, I pulled out my laptop and turned it toward them. The first image filled the screen. Madison and Brittany at JFK's Alitalia first-class lounge, champagne in hand. Boarding passes clearly visible. Timestamp: 4:07 a.m. Dad's chopsticks froze midair. Madison's smirk faltered. Click. Next slide. Madison swiping my card at Hotel Lungarno in Florence, bags of designer clothing at her feet. Timestamp. 6:42 p.m. Italy time. Click. Another. Madison inside Buccellati in Milan, trying on a gold bracelet. 2,900. Paid in full with my card. You want me to keep going? I asked, my tone calm but just loud enough to make Madison flinch. Dad started to speak, but I cut him off. No. You've been telling me to stop pretending all week. Let's get it all out in the open. I clicked to the final slide. A full transaction report from my card's tracking system, every purchase logged with merchant data and geotagged coordinates. I didn't just freeze the card, I said. I filed a formal claim for unauthorized charges. The bank has already reversed the transactions, and the police have a copy of this report. The color drained from Madison's face. You called the cops? You made purchases without my permission, I said flatly. On a business account. That carries serious legal consequences. You jeopardized my livelihood. Dad slammed his palm on the table. This is family. We don't call the police over family disputes. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Family? You mean the same family that has spent years draining me dry while defending her every screw-up? The same family that told me to stop pretending instead of believing me when I had evidence in my hand? Madison's voice cracked, the fake confidence crumbling. I can pay you back. I leaned forward. No, you can't. You don't have to. 19-0, and you won't. Which is why you're going to pack your bags tonight and get out of my apartment. And you, Dad, you're not welcome here until you can admit what she did and apologize for siding against me. Dad's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. She's your sister. No, I said, standing. She's a grown adult who's been allowed to live without consequences because you've never made her face them. Congratulations. She's about to. I slid an envelope across the table. Inside, a printed copy of the police report, the bank's case number, and a list of every transaction she made. If you think I'm bluffing, call the detective. He's expecting your call. Madison pushed her chair back so fast it scraped the floor. You're ruining my life. I pointed to the door. No, Madison. I'm making sure you don't ruin mine. She stormed into the guest room to start packing. Dad stayed for a moment, staring at the envelope like it might explode. Then he stood, muttered something about me being heartless, and followed her out. When the door slammed shut, the silence felt like oxygen flooding my lungs. For the first time in years, I felt absolute, unshakable control over my own life. For the first 24 hours after I kicked them out, my phone didn't stop vibrating. Madison started with texts. You're overreacting. You've always been jealous of me. You'll regret this. When that didn't get a response, she switched to voice messages, half crying, half screaming. You've turned the whole family against me. Dad's so upset he hasn't eaten all day. Good, I thought. Maybe now he knows what it feels like when someone else stops carrying his weight. By the next morning, Dad was calling nonstop. I let every call go to voicemail. Then came the guilt trips via Mom, who I hadn't seen in weeks. Can't you just drop the charges? It's tearing us apart. She's your only sister. You should be supporting each other. Supporting her? I'd been doing that since we were teenagers. The only thing Madison had ever supported was her own bad habits. 2 days later, the real consequences kicked in. Detective Harris from the Financial Crimes Unit called to confirm they had formally contacted Madison. She had two options: pay back the full 19-0 and sign an admission of guilt, or face charges. I braced myself for the next tidal wave of begging. Instead, there was silence, an ominous kind of quiet that meant she was scrambling for a lifeline. Sure enough, the next morning, Brittany called. She never calls me unless she wants something. Charlotte, she began, trying for that fake friendly tone. Madison's freaking out. If she goes down for this, she'll never get a job again. I let her ramble for a full minute before cutting in. Maybe she should have thought about that before taking my card to fund her European vacation. And Brittany? If I were you, I'd delete that Rome photo dump before the police start asking how you paid for your ticket. The line went dead. That afternoon, Mom showed up at my door unannounced. She didn't even knock, just walked in like she still had the right. They're staying at a motel, she said, her voice trembling with that practiced mix of shame and disappointment. "It's awful. You've humiliated your sister." "Humiliated?" I asked. "No, Mom. I just clarified the facts. She wanted first-class treatment. Now she's getting it. Family matters shouldn't be public," she pressed. "They're only public," I shot back, "because Madison made 19,000 worth of documented purchases without authorization." Mom's face tightened. "Your father thinks you've gone too far." I smiled. "Then your father can explain why he's defending actions that are under a criminal investigation. And until he's ready to admit what happened, he's not welcome here." Her mouth opened, then closed. She left without another word. Within a week, the family split into two camps. Dad, Mom, Brittany, and the cousins who'd always worshipped Madison, painting me as the cold, heartless sister who sold out her own blood. My aunt, uncle, and a handful of relatives who'd quietly been watching this dynamic for years, finally telling me they were proud of me for standing up for myself. Uncle Robert even said, "We all knew Madison was out of control, but no one wanted to be the first to say it." It felt good to finally be the first. 2 weeks after the dinner, Madison finally appeared at my building. Not to apologize, of course not, but to negotiate. She wasn't wearing Gucci this time. Just a faded hoodie and jeans, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked smaller, like Italy had been a lifetime ago. "They're offering to drop everything if I pay you back in 6 months, she said, avoiding my eyes. "But I need you to tell them you're okay with it." I didn't even pause. "You can send the payments through my lawyer. I'm not speaking for you, and I'm not softening anything. You do this on the record, or you deal with the charges." Her jaw tightened. "You're really done with me, aren't you?" I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Madison, I was done with you the second you took my card. This," I gestured between us, "is just paperwork." She didn't reply, just turned and walked away, shoulders stiff. By then, the family lines had hardened. Dad stopped calling. Mom texted only to send vague, guilt-laced reminders like, "Family is all we have." Brittany had blocked me on Instagram, and I considered that a blessing. Meanwhile, the other side of the family, the ones who'd stayed quiet for years, kept reaching out. My aunt sent me a bottle of wine with a note, "For your first taste of peace in a long time." Uncle Robert emailed me a link to an article about setting boundaries with entitled relatives. Still, the tension was constant. Every family gathering was split into two corners, the air heavy with unspoken arguments. If Dad was there, I wasn't invited, and vice versa. It was exhausting, but it was also freeing. For once, I wasn't sitting through dinners pretending everything was fine while Madison bragged about her latest adventure. 3 months after the confrontation, I got the official update. The case was closed. Madison had scraped together the full 19,000 how, I didn't want to know, signed an admission of guilt, and now had a fraud charge on her record. Dad still refused to look me in the eye. "The last time we passed each other in a parking lot," he muttered. "Hope you're proud of yourself," without slowing his stride. I was. Not because I'd won some family fight, but because I'd stopped losing myself in it. Madison hadn't set foot in my apartment since that night, and I hadn't had to check my bank account in the middle of the night, worried about surprise charges. I knew there would be more attempts in the future, subtle, indirect, maybe even disguised as olive branches. But the difference now was simple. I'd learned how to say no, and mean it, and if they couldn't accept that, that was their problem, not mine. 6 months have passed since the night I slid that police report across the table. My apartment is quieter now. No slammed doors at midnight. No disappearing oat milk. No passive-aggressive sighs when I say I'm busy. I've stopped living in a constant state of damage control, no longer budgeting around someone else's irresponsibility, no longer waiting for the next emergency that magically only I can fix. Looking back, it's almost laughable how long I let that cycle run. Years of telling myself just this once. Years of deciding it was easier to pay the bill than to start a fight. Years of believing that family helps family meant I was obligated to drain myself for their comfort. Here's the truth they never want you to realize. If you don't set boundaries, they'll keep moving the goalposts until you can't even recognize yourself. They don't stop because you've been generous. They stop because you make it impossible for them to keep taking. And when you finally draw that line, they'll call you selfish. They'll call you heartless. They'll call you every name in the book because you've cut off their supply. I ran into Brittany at the grocery store last week. She froze like she'd seen a ghost. I smiled, said hello, and kept walking. She probably expected me to ask about Madison, to show some lingering curiosity. But the truth is, I genuinely don't care. Madison's Instagram is still active, but it's no longer first-class lounges and boutique hauls. Now it's thrift store finds and cheap wine nights. Her captions are full of starting over quotes, but I know better. This isn't reinvention, it's reality catching up. And me? I'm doing better than ever. My business is thriving. My bills are mine alone. My space is mine in every sense, financially, emotionally, physically. If Dad, Madison, or anyone else from that side of the family ever tries to test those boundaries again, I won't need a slide deck, a police report, or proof. One word will be enough. No. Because I've learned the most freeing truth there is. I am not their safety net. I am not their backup plan. I will never be their ATM.